Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Okay, joining me now, Delaware Democratic Senator Chris Coons, who'd be somebody voting on all of these different confirmations. Senator, good to see you.
Good to see you, Shannon. Thanks for a chance to be on again.
Okay, so let's talk about RFK Jr., because as I mentioned, there are people within the medical establishment community who have some problems with him, but do like the things he's highlighting. In a New York Times guest essay, Dr. Rachel Bedard says this: I believe there's a healthcare agenda that finds common ground between people like myself, medical researchers and clinicians, and Mr. Kennedy. There's opportunity to leverage Mr. Kennedy's skepticism and relative political independence for good to turn his most valid criticisms of the American healthcare system into constructive reforms. Are you open to sitting down and having this kind of conversation with him about where he really stands on all these issues?
Of course. And you introduced me, Shannon, as someone who will get a chance to vote on all of these nominations. I certainly hope that's the case and that we won't see nominees jammed through in recess appointments where there's no confirmation hearing, no confirmation vote, and they take over incredibly powerful positions for up to 2 years. Of course, I'd be willing to meet with President-elect Trump's nominees. I did the previous time he was president. I voted on many of them, and I look forward to meeting with RFK Jr. I have to say, though, that his long record of being an anti-vaccine campaigner gives me real pause and concern. That'd be the first thing I'd ask him about, because the fact that American children are vaccinated against things like measles, mumps, and rubella keeps us safe and saves millions of lives a year. So getting to the bottom of his real views on a wide range of issues, from vaccines to dietary supplements to the research work of CDC, NIH, and FDA, and whether he's pro-choice or pro-life, all of that would be important for us to get some clarity on.
Okay, so just a few days ago, he said he's not anti-vaccine and he doesn't accept that label that's been given to him. He says he is for being more transparent. He's not going to block any vaccines for people or for kids or whatever. But he says he wants people to have more of the scientific information and studies that have gone on behind the vaccines. Is that a kind of conversation, you know, does that position, would that be comforting or acceptable to you to hear him say it and articulate it in that way?
Yes. Look, Shannon, the whole point of a confirmation process is to have meetings with those who've been nominated to run incredibly significant and powerful agencies and get clarity on their views, their experience, and their character. That's why, frankly, there's been both great consternation in the Senate about Matt Gaetz being nominated to be the next Attorney General because of real concerns about his character. And there's generally been real positivity about Senator Marco Rubio being nominated to be the next Secretary of State. Senator Rubio has served in a leading role on the Intelligence Committee, on the Foreign Relations Committee for 14 years. He's a conservative Republican. He and I differ on some key policies, but he's someone I've worked with, legislated with, traveled with. Matt Gaetz, on the other hand, is someone who just resigned in order to avoid the public release of a bipartisan report of the House Ethics Committee that might very well have cast very damning allegations against his character and conduct in the Congress.
Yeah, we don't know what it says. As I said earlier, it might clear him. I mean, the DOJ decided not to charge him in February of last year. But to that House ethics issue, you have obviously called for it to be released. You're not the only one. There are Republicans, including John Cornyn on the Senate Judiciary Committee with you as well, saying that he'd be open to a subpoena. Do you think there would be bipartisan support from the committee to do what you needed to do to get your hands on that report?
Yes, and to be clear about what Speaker Johnson said before, the Ethics Committee loses its jurisdiction to discipline a member when they're no longer a member. On several occasions in the past, the House Ethics Committee has released a report when someone, as Matt Gaetz just did, resigned at the last moment in order to avoid the release of a report. Some might say, why is it relevant now? It's relevant because the Senate has a constitutional role. It's called our advice and consent role, to make sure that a president-elect mostly gets their choice, their nominees, but doesn't get to put people in who are unqualified or who lack the requisite character and capabilities to lead an incredibly important agency like the Department of Justice.
Well, I'll be interested to see if the subpoena does come from your committee as we get into this in January. But absent this, you've had the conversation about recess appointments that may cut the Senate out of this process altogether, potentially. Do you think that that all Republicans, all 53 of them, once you flip into the new year, if that McCormick seat holds as we expect in the midst of this recount, Do you think all of them would vote to adjourn the Senate? Do you think there are some Republican colleagues of yours who would say, we're not going to adjourn the Senate and go along with this recess end run?
Likely, yes, Shannon, because they understand our constitutional role. We're a check and balance. We're there to be a guardrail. You cited earlier a Wall Street Journal editorial that said, frankly, if you take the confirmation process out and you only put in the cabinet as a result of recess appointments, then there's a real risk that future administrations, future presidents will jam in increasingly marginal characters who are there because of their popularity or their celebrity or what they've said, but who lack the requisite skill and experience, policy views, and character to lead what are huge and significant federal agencies. I agree with that view.
Okay, there's something else being worked on. It's called the Department of Government Efficiency. It's not going to be an official government entity, but run by Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. What they want to do is highlight where they say there is tons of government fraud, overregulation, too many federal employees. The Wall Street Journal editorial board says this thing could be Trump's best idea. They say the attempt to tame and shrink Leviathan is worth the toil, and it's essential to liberating Americans from the tyranny of the expanding administrative state. You know, there are these government waste reports that come out from members every year pointing out all kinds of, crazy things that the American taxpayer has no idea that they're funding. What do you make of this effort? I mean, if these come to Congress as suggestions you would have to then act on or have the opportunity to act on, is it a worthwhile exercise?
Look, when President Clinton came into office, one of the things he asked his vice president, Al Gore, to do was to lead a commission to look at government efficiency and operation. They worked closely with folks in the bureaucracy who knew better than anyone where there were things that they were doing that were unnecessary or duplicative, and they actually saved billions and billions of dollars. Shannon, we also already have an agency. It's called the GAO, the General Accounting Office, that does reports. As you mentioned, they release them every Congress that highlight areas of inefficiency in waste and operations. The numbers that Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk have thrown out, that they might be able to cut $2 trillion out of government spending, there's no way to achieve that kind of savings without cutting into critical functions like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, veterans health care. But they could save tens or even hundreds of billions of dollars. Depending on how it's structured and what they do, this could be a constructive undertaking that ought to be embraced. But frankly, it somewhat amuses me that they've chosen two billionaires with no prior government experience to run this entity, whatever it will be, and that one of them is a major government contractor. I think it's important that we proceed with transparency and guardrails. Look, the success that Elon Musk has had in business means he may well have some insights into operational efficiency. But it amuses me, frankly, that it takes two of these folks to put together an organization on government efficiency. And I look forward to having a conversation about what that path forward can and should look like so that we achieve some progress for the American people.
I mean, these are successful guys who say they're doing it for $0. So that's a cost-cutting measure, I guess,
That's
off the
positive.
top. Senator, thank you for your time. Always good to see you.
Thank you, Shannon.
Okay, so we mentioned this. Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, they're trying to go for unprecedented cuts to federal bureaucracy. Our panel is going to dig into this newly minted Department of Government Efficiency.